My dad is trying to force my uncontrollable stepsister on my trip, and I told him I'd never forgive him. I, 17F, am currently sitting in my aunt's guest room, surrounded by half-packed boxes and a feeling of absolute exhaustion. My graduation is just around the corner, and instead of celebrating, I am currently embroiled in a massive fallout with my father that has basically ended our relationship. To give some background, my mom passed away about 3.5 years ago. It was devastating, and for a while it was just me and my dad. But a year and a half after she died, my dad remarried. His wife came with a daughter, who is now 15. From the moment we moved into the same house, my life shifted from being a daughter to being an unpaid, on-call babysitter and companion to a girl I genuinely cannot stand. My stepsister is the definition of a nightmare. She isn't neurodivergent as far as any doctor can tell. She's been to therapy and specialists because her behavior is so extreme, but the consensus is always the same. She is just insanely spoiled. Since the day I met her, she has used tantrums as a weapon. The very first time we all went out to dinner, everyone agreed on a Mexican place. She wanted burgers. When she didn't get her way, she screamed in the back of the car for 10 straight minutes, a full-on, lung-bursting shriek, until her mother finally gave in and promised to take her to get a milkshake and a burger afterward. As soon as she got the promise, she stopped mid-scream, went back to her phone, and started texting like nothing happened. Since the wedding, my dad and his wife have pushed her onto me constantly. If I want to go to the movies with friends, I'm told I have to take her or stay home. If I want to go to the mall, she has to come. And when she comes, she ruins everything. I once made the mistake of taking her bowling with my friends. She spent the entire time trying to stick her hands into the ball return mechanism and literally tried to run down the lane while people were throwing. I had to physically restrain her to keep her from getting hurt, and eventually, I just had to pack up and take her home. My friends were annoyed, my night was ruined, and when I told my dad, he just said, "She's just spirited. You need to be more patient." The peak of this was my 16th birthday. I wanted a small party with my friends. My dad's wife insisted that my stepsister be involved in everything. When the cake came out, it turned out they had bought a second, smaller, special cake just for her, so she wouldn't feel left out. Then, as everyone started singing to me, she leaned over and blew out the candles on my cake before I could make a wish. I was furious. I told her to stop, and I complained to my dad. He looked me in the eye and said, "It's time to grow up. Being a sister is about sharing things." I snapped and told him, "I don't have a sister." She overheard it, went into a complete rampage, screaming, throwing things, the whole bit, and the party was over. After that, I distanced myself as much as possible. I've been working as a babysitter since I was 13. I've saved every penny because I knew I needed a way out. My friends and I have been planning a graduation trip for a year. We rented a cabin for 3 weeks this summer before we all head off to different colleges. It's supposed to be our last big hurrah. I kept the trip a secret. I didn't tell my dad the details, and I certainly didn't tell her. But a few nights ago, I was in my room with the door shut, listening to music and eating pizza, while on a group call with my friends. We were finalizing the grocery list and the activities. Suddenly, the closet door in my room swung open. She had snuck in while I was in the bathroom and had been hiding in there the whole time eavesdropping. She burst out and started demanding to know if she could come. I told her flat out, "No, get out of my room." She started stomping her feet, literally doing the toddler stomp at 15 years old, and ran out of the room crying. My friends on the phone were horrified. They've dealt with her before, and they begged me not to let her come. 5 minutes later, my dad called me downstairs. He was sitting at the kitchen table with his wife, and my stepsister was sitting there sobbing without any actual tears. My dad asked me if she could go on the trip. He said she's had a hard year and could use a vacation. I told him absolutely not. I explained that it's a trip for graduating seniors, and I am not spending 3 weeks of my summer being a full-time guardian for someone who can't even behave in a bowling alley. My dad's wife chimed in then, calling me selfish. She reminded me that my dad was supposed to pay for the final portion of the trip, the rental deposit balance, as a graduation gift. She told me, "If she doesn't go, then you don't go." I looked at her and told her she didn't get a say. I told her she wasn't my mom and that she needed to stop forcing her child on me when she's the one who created this monster by never saying no. My stepsister started yelling about how I was a bad big sister and how I hated her. I looked at her and said, "I do hate spending time with you. You ruin everything you touch." She ran away crying, and my dad went white with anger. He told me that if I didn't take her and make it right, he was withdrawing all financial support for the trip and wouldn't be helping with my college incidentals. I realized then that he was never going to choose me. I told him, "If you do this, if you force her on me or take away my graduation gift because I won't be her nanny, I will never forgive you. And I will not be talking to you anymore. He laughed and said I was being dramatic. He told me she isn't that bad and that I'm just being a brat. I didn't argue. I went upstairs, grabbed a suitcase, and packed as much as I could fit. I called my aunt, my mom's sister. She has always hated how my dad handled the remarriage. I told her everything. She told me to come over immediately. When I was walking out the door, my dad tried to block me. I told him I was going to my aunt's. He blew up, telling me that I was being ungrateful and that they are my family now, and my aunt is just extended family. I told him my aunt is the only one who actually remembers my mother, and I left. My aunt is amazing. She told me that she would cover the rest of the trip costs that my dad took away. She also told me that I can stay with her until college starts and that she'll help me move into the dorms. I sent a final text to my dad telling him that I am safe, but that I meant what I said. I won't forgive him for trying to extort me into taking care of his wife's child. My phone has been blowing up with texts from his wife calling me a family destroyer and saying I've broken my stepsister's heart. My dad sent a long email saying I'm throwing away a father over a cabin trip. But it isn't about the cabin. It's about the last 3 years of being pushed aside. It's about the fact that he watched her blow out my candles and told me to grow up. It's about the fact that he expects me to give up my graduation celebration to babysit a girl who won't even let me have a birthday cake in peace. Am I being dramatic? My dad and his wife have half the family convinced that I'm a monster for leaving and for rejecting my sister. But I don't feel like a sister. I feel like an employee who finally quit. I'm looking at the graduation dress I bought with my own money, and I realize I'll be walking across that stage with my aunt in the stands instead of my father. It hurts, but the thought of taking that girl to the cabin for 3 weeks makes me feel physically ill. I can't do it anymore. Am I the a-hole? Update. I know a lot of people asked for an update after my last post, and honestly, I didn't expect so many people to care. I read far more comments than I replied to, and a lot of what people said stuck with me over the past few months. Some of it was hard to hear, because it forced me to admit things I had been avoiding for years, especially about my dad. But enough has happened since then that I figured I owed everyone an update. The trip happened. And no, I did not take Lily. I meant what I said in my original post, and for once in that house I actually followed through on a boundary without backing down, because someone screamed loud enough. The weeks between me leaving for my aunt's house and the trip itself were tense in a way that is honestly hard to explain unless you've lived in a house where everyone is pretending things are fine, while quietly preparing for war. My dad kept reaching out acting like, if we just didn't discuss it directly, I would eventually cave and bring Lily. He would phrase things in this weird, overly casual way like he was trying to trick reality into changing. He kept saying things like asking what snacks Lily should pack or whether Lily needed her own bed at the cabin, as if simply talking about her attendance enough times would somehow make me surrender out of exhaustion. Every single time I told him the same thing. She was not coming. I was not babysitting her. I was not spending the summer I paid for supervising a spoiled 15-year-old who ruined every event she touched. He never seemed to fully believe me. The morning we left for the cabin, we were on the road before sunrise. My friends picked me up from my aunt's house around 6 in the morning. I deliberately did not tell my dad the exact departure time because I knew if he had the opportunity, he would show up with Lily and try to force a confrontation in front of everyone. I turned my phone off before we even hit the highway. By the time he finally called me repeatedly, we were already about 5 hours away. He left multiple voicemails ranging from angry to panicked to demanding I turn around because apparently he had promised Lily right up until the last second that she was going. That was not my problem. From what I found out later, he and his wife had no backup plan because they genuinely thought I would fold. They had apparently scheduled their own trip and had intended for me taking Lily to conveniently solve their childcare problem for nearly a month. When they realized I was gone and she was not with me, their plans collapsed. And Lily, predictably, lost her mind. According to my aunt, who heard the full story from my dad during one of his furious calls, Lily threw one of her usual meltdowns when she realized I had actually left without her. She screamed, broke a lamp, locked herself in her room, and refused to come out for hours. Her mother blamed my father for not controlling me. My father blamed me for embarrassing him. They ended up canceling whatever trip they had planned because they had no one willing to watch her for that long. So yes, they were left in a difficult position. I do not care. The cabin trip ended up being one of the best experiences of my life. I genuinely didn't realize how much constant tension I had been living under until I was away from it. For nearly a month, I got to exist without someone else's tantrums dictating everyone's mood. No one expected me to monitor another person. No one dumped responsibility in my lap because I happened to be the most functional person in the room. No one told me to be mature while rewarding childish behavior. We extended the trip because everyone was having such a good time and because several of us had flexible summer schedules. It ended up lasting almost a month. It was the first time in years I felt like a normal teenager instead of unpaid domestic labor. When I got back, reality hit immediately. The second I walked into my dad's house to get the rest of my belongings, the explosion happened. My dad, his wife, and I ended up in a screaming match that lasted hours. His wife accused me of deliberately sabotaging them and leaving them in an impossible situation. She said I had ruined their summer, traumatized Lily, and embarrassed them in front of people they had made plans with. She acted like I had abandoned my own child at an airport instead of refusing to take someone else's daughter on a trip she was never invited to. My dad was angry too, but underneath the anger, there was something else. He looked tired, defeated. Like for the first time, he was starting to understand that the situation had spiraled past where he could smooth it over by telling me to be the bigger person. We talked for hours after his wife stormed off. For the first time in a long time, he actually listened. I told him everything. Not just about the trip. About all of it. About feeling replaced after mom died. About how fast he remarried, and how it felt like he expected me to immediately adapt to a new family structure without ever asking what I needed. About how he kept volunteering me to manage Lily, because it was easier than parenting her. About how every time I was upset, I became dramatic, but every time Lily was upset, the entire household bent to accommodate her. He cried. I cried. And at the end of that conversation, he said maybe the healthiest thing for both of us was space. He said maybe living separately while we worked on rebuilding our relationship would help. I'm not going to lie, hearing that hurt. Not because he was wrong necessarily. He probably wasn't. But because some part of me still wanted him to say, stay. We'll fix this. This is your home. Instead, the answer was basically that I could leave, and maybe we'd work on things from a distance. So, I moved in fully with my aunt. We started family therapy, just me and him. And for a while, it actually felt like things might improve. Therapy was difficult but productive. He admitted he had relied on me too much. He admitted he had prioritized keeping peace in his marriage over listening to me. He admitted he had gotten so focused on blending the family that he ignored how miserable I was. He even admitted he had underestimated Lily's behavior because dealing with her constantly had normalized things for him. It was not perfect, but for the first time I felt like maybe my dad was seeing reality instead of the version of our family he wanted to believe existed. His wife hated every second of it. She apparently could not stand that therapy sessions were making him acknowledge my side of things. He started pushing back on her more at home. He started questioning some of the things she framed as normal sibling conflict. He stopped automatically defending Lily in conversations. That peace lasted until he ruined it. A few months into therapy, he invited me over for dinner. I should have known better. Dinner started normally enough. Awkward but manageable. Then halfway through the meal, he asked if I would be willing to integrate his wife and Lily into our therapy sessions. He said if the goal was family healing, eventually they needed to be involved. I told him no. Calmly. Firmly. I said I had no interest in building a relationship with either of them. That was when everything detonated. His wife immediately started screaming that I was selfish, ungrateful, and cruel. She called me a selfish C******, and said I should be grateful she allowed me to live in her home after she moved in, as if she had done me some grand favor by occupying the house where I already lived before she arrived. I waited for my dad to shut that down. He said nothing. He just sat there, silent. Again. And in that moment, everything therapy had built collapsed. Because it did not matter what he said in therapy if, when it counted, he still sat quietly while someone verbally attacked me in front of him. I left. I haven't spoken to him in any meaningful way since then. That was almost a month before I moved into college. He texted, called, sent long messages about how I was throwing away progress. But all I could think was that progress means nothing if it disappears the second his wife gets angry. Then came college move-in. My aunt helped me pack everything. She drove with me to campus. She cried when she saw my dorm room and pretended she had something in her eye while helping me put sheets on my bed. My dad showed up once before move-in to try and talk. Apparently his wife did not know he was there because while he was with me, she kept calling him repeatedly until he finally lied and said he was somewhere else. I asked him why he had to lie just to see his daughter. He didn't really have an answer. So I gave him one. I told him if he had to sneak around to have a relationship with me because his wife disapproved, then we didn't need to keep pretending the situation was fixable right now. I told him it was obvious where his priorities were. I said we could stop therapy, stop forcing contact, and maybe revisit things someday when he figured out what kind of father he wanted to be. He cried. Again. I did not, because at that point I was just tired. College has been incredible. I am only in my first week, but I already feel lighter than I have in years. I live on campus now, and the freedom is honestly surreal. No one barges into my room. No one volunteers my time. No one expects me to revolve around someone else's moods. I can leave my dorm and go get food without being asked to drag along a human tornado. It's overwhelming in the best way. I joined the honors club. I joined a creative writing/book club. I've made friends who know me as just me, not as the girl with a crazy family situation. I'm studying to become a nurse, and for the first time in a long time, I feel genuinely excited about my future instead of just desperate to escape my present. I also started individual therapy, not family therapy, real therapy for me, because something a lot of people pointed out on my last post is that my grief over losing my mom was never properly addressed. And they were right. My dad never got me help after she died. He focused on moving forward, remarrying, rebuilding his life, and expected me to adapt on the same timeline. I didn't. I just buried everything because there was never room for my grief once his new family arrived. Therapy has been helping. Painfully, but helping. My aunt has been more of a mother to me in the past year than anyone else has been since my mom died. And speaking of my aunt, there is one genuinely happy update that still doesn't feel real. She's pregnant. She was told when she was 22 that she would likely never be able to have children. She is now 4 months pregnant. I am going to be a godmother. When she told me, I was thrilled for her, but I'll admit I got emotional afterward because part of me was scared. She's the only family I really have right now, and I was terrified that once the baby came, I'd somehow stop mattering. I told her that. We both cried. She held my face and told me that loving her child would never mean loving me less. She said she has enough room in her heart for both. She said whether I liked it or not, she had signed up for life when she stepped in for my mom. I believed her. I am planning her baby shower. I have never been so excited for someone else's child to exist. As for my dad, I don't know what happens next. Maybe one day he leaves her. Maybe one day he realizes how much damage he did by confusing peacekeeping with parenting. Maybe he doesn't. Right now, I'm done trying to drag him toward the version of father I deserved. He has had multiple chances. He keeps choosing silence. And silence is a choice. So that's where things stand. I lost my dad in every way that matters, even if he's still alive. That hurts more than I can explain. But I also gained freedom, stability, and a future that no longer revolves around surviving someone else's dysfunction. I miss the father I used to think I had. I do not miss living in that house. Thank you to everyone who gave advice, encouragement, and reality checks. A lot of strangers on the internet were kinder and more honest with me than some of my own family. For now, I'm focusing on school, my future, and building a life that doesn't require me to shrink myself for other people's comfort. And if my dad ever decides to truly show up for me instead of halfway showing up while protecting everyone else's feelings first, maybe we can talk. Until then, I'm done begging to be chosen. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Daily Tales Update.